Today, I'll be talking about literary terms pertaining to novel. This is part of BA final year syllabus. The first literary term that we are going to take up is picaresque novel. The word picaresque has been taken from the Spanish word picaro. So it has been derived from the word picaro, and picaro meant a rogue or a rascal. Uh, and the way it is used in the current scenario, this usage uh, became popular in Spain in 1545, and the expression picaresque novel was coined in 1810. The main character, the picaro, or the main character in this kind of novel, usually belongs to low class, and he lives his life by his wits and shows little or no development of character throughout the narrative. So, throughout the story, the character does not show much development in his or her character, and he lives the life according to his wits. So, whatever he feels like doing, he does it without bothering about the development of his character or without bothering about what he should or he shouldn't do. Picaresque novel is realistic in manner and episodic in structure. Episodic in structure means it does not have a single plot. Now I'll elaborate a little bit. When we are talking of episodic structure, we mean that the character has various escapades, and each escapade or the adventure that he undergoes has a structure of its own. When we mean structure and when we say a plot, we mean the arrangement of events. So the narrative is the narrative has various episodes, and each episode has its own plot. So there is not a single plot, the beginning, middle, or end. Rather, each episode has its own beginning, middle, and end, and the entire narrative consists of various episodes. The narrative contains series of escapades of the main character. So there are number of escapades of the main character, and each escapade has its own structure. An early example is Thomas Nash's The Unfortunate Traveler. Thomas Nash was an Elizabethan writer, and he was one of the university wits. Next, the term is also applied to narratives that do not have a Picaro as the central character. So, it is not necessary that the Picaro or a rogue has to be the central character of the novel, but it can also be that the usually structured as sequence of episodes united by presence of the central character. So there can be a sequence of episodes, and with one central character in all those episodes, that kind of narrative can also be called picaresque. The central character may or may not be a picaro. For example, Henry Fielding's Tom Jones. Next point, Gordon Lord Byron's narrative poem Don Juan is a rare example of picaresque story in verse. Normally, a picaresque novel obviously is a prose version, but this is an exception that Don Juan by Byron is a picaresque story, but it is written in verse. That is, it is written in poetic form. Its form is poetic. The next kind of novel is novel of sensibility, or can also be called sentimental novel. It remained a popular form for most of the 18th century. So it was popular in the 18th century. And a man of sensibility is the one who possesses a sympathetic heart that could feel the joys and sorrows of others. So when we say that is what we call a sensible man. When we are talking of sensibility, we are talking of a person who has a heart which is full of sympathy and empathy, who can feel the joys or who can feel the sadness or happiness of others around him. Next point, the doctrine of sensibility was a reaction against 17th century's excessive emphasis on reason. Now, 17th century, when you'll go through the history of English literature, you will see that 17th century the gave lots of emphasis on reason. So this novel of sensibility, or the doctrine of sensibility, was a reaction against the excessive emphasis on reason, that everything does not we don't have to reason out everything. There are certain things which do happen in our life but which do not have any reason, mainly dealing with the emotional part of a person's life. Next, the term sensibility suggests a highly developed emotional and intellectual understanding and responsiveness to aesthetic values. So, when we are talking of sensibility, we are talking about a person who has highly developed emotional and intellectual understanding. So, who is very sensitive towards other people and who understands the aesthetic and moral values more than others. Next, the philosophy of sensibility was also a reaction against Thomas Hobbes' view that human behavior is essentially selfish. So, it was a reaction against Thomas Hobbes' view also, who believed that human behavior or human beings are essentially selfish. But this we cannot universally apply to all human beings, because all human beings are not selfish. So, it cannot be universally true. There are many people who do feel good or bad when they see somebody in trouble, or they feel happy when they see somebody happy. So it is not necessarily that every human being is selfish in nature, or every human being is bothered only about himself or herself. Next, the term is also used for writers who respond to experiences of life in a very intellectual way. So, this the term novel of sensibility, it is applicable to the character in the narrative who feels very sensitively about others, and at the same time it is applicable also to the writer who can respond to experiences, who can feel the life in a very sensitive way, or who is very keen in observing the minute details of life. Usually writers are, but some are more sensitive than others. The next, this quality of sensibility was explored in the novel of sensibility. So whatever this philosophy of sensibility said, it was explored in the novel of sensibility. And sentimental novel became popular in Europe in the late 18th century. And when this philosophy of